Do you think people who think that God is one have reached that conclusion out of ego?
In quality, we are the same as God. We are made of spirit. Our soul is spirit. But in quantity, we are infinitesimal.
So what does the presence of God actually feel like in someone's life? Because it doesn't look like anything, because at least I can't see God.
It's hard to wrap the mind around the fact that God has a personality.
The most normal thing to us is personal relationships. Yet when a personal relationship is given to God, it becomes very difficult to comprehend.
If all you're used to are shabby relationships with imperfect people, then how can you approach some divine, omnipotent, perfected being in a personal way?
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
Welcome to another roundtable episode of For Soul's Sake. I'm here with Keli and with Nāma, and we are talking all things spirituality, specifically Bhakti Yoga based on the Bhagavad Gita. And today we've got an incredible verse. But before we do, what did you have for dinner?
I had some kind of Thai food that was great.
I mean, to be completely candid, we ate together, so just kind of a conversation opener.
Yeah.
Did you like anything from that place?
I did, yeah. I liked the sauce for the spring rolls because it was unexpectedly good because the sauce itself was quite clear. So I thought there won't be much flavour
like
in
oil,
this.
innit?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I tasted it, wow, was that a different
It's like
story.
sweet and sour,
Yeah.
but kind of gooey.
You're a bit of a connoisseur of vegan eateries.
Am I?
Yeah. I mean, every time you're like sending me on Instagram DMs.
I like to experiment.
Yeah.
Goes good sometimes.
Goes good.
Thai food's always a winner.
Thai food.
Good pad Thai with peanuts, a bit of lime.
Peanut sauce or peanuts?
Yeah, you get crumble of peanuts on top.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I have had.
Yeah, you get crumbled peanuts. And then tempeh. Actually,
Here we go.
I bought some extra firm smoked tofu the other day. Whew, game changer.
I don't know what that is. Extra firm tofu.
Tofu can be very soft.
Oh, okay.
Super soft. So
But
this one's
extra firm.
yeah, you get different grades.
Oh,
Have you ever been to one of those sushi
Conveyor belt.
things?
Yeah.
Like,
Yo
is there a
sushi.
vegan one of them?
No.
There's not a vegan one, no. But
I
there
thought that's a gap in the market.
is a gap in the market. But you can rack up the costs. You just think, oh, I'll have that plate. Boom.
Oh, I thought you
Next
just
plate.
pay like a flat
No,
fee and then
no,
you
no.
can
You
get
take
what you want.
you take the plates into that at the end, and each colour of plate has a different charge.
Stacks up.
Before you know it, it's like you spent £100 on sushi.
Oh no, I should never go in there.
No, you should totally. This is a great, great munch.
Sometimes it's just the way you say things.
Sometimes he says it for the sake of saying it. He's like, yeah, you should go. It's like he's never been there. He didn't even process the answer. He said.
It's a great man. Great. Off to a strong start. Let's talk about something serious.
All right, come on in. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse number 10. Today we're talking about God being a personal being, or that we are all God. There's like two schools of thought that are commonly confused by most yogis and spiritualists, and it's you usually fall into one camp or another, that God is a person, a personal being separate from us that we can worship, or that we are all God and that we are all divine and all is one. And we're here to share our perspective on it. Should be interesting. So the verse that we've chosen that we feel there's so many verses that we could have chosen. I'm still crying tears from our moment of laughter. But there's so many verses that we could have chosen on this, but we've chosen one that's maybe not as obvious in one sense, but it's quite a good one. So it's from chapter 7, verse 10. Translation goes, O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligent of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. The original seed of all existences. Can you call yourself that? If you can't, maybe you're not God.
I like the part about I am the intelligence of the intelligent, because that's where it might become confusing for us to discern if we're God or not. Because as soon as we do something that's impressive, we immediately want to take the credit for that. So we think that was by my intelligence or by my prowess I have reached this incredible position.
Yeah.
But to actually detach yourself from that, or remove yourself and see that I am a conduit, that, God is working through me. It's not that things are happening from me. Then that's the distinction. But it could, if you don't have the realization, it could be easy to think, actually, no, this is me doing all this.
It's interesting, right? Because I think this concept has been propounded in our modern world that I'm a self-made person.
Yeah.
And I talk about this often in our kirtan gatherings, that there's no such thing as a self-made person. And I got this from a wonderful teacher known by the name of Gunagrahi Swami. And he writes, there's no such thing as a self-made man. We're all made of prayers and blessings. And I so much appreciate that, because it just really kind of rings true in my mind that whenever I feel like I've done something that's good in the world, that to recognize that it's taken so many people to get me to the point of at least even speaking it, what to speak of, realizing it, that it's a compounded village of love and blessings that's flowing through. And so often I also share that anything good you hear from me is definitely a product of my teachers and ultimately God's grace. And anything bad you hear me is most likely me. And so recognizing that I'm not the source of intelligence, I've been gifted that, starts to peel away at this layer of thinking that I maybe am not God, but maybe God-like.
But it sounds attractive, doesn't it? I am God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's... we're all in the same school of thought. We all think God is a person. Just being completely honest, it's an honest podcast. Do you think people who think that God is one, do you think that they have reached that conclusion out of ego? Do you think, why do you think that they think like that?
So I used to think myself.
So you're good?
No, not that I was God, but that me and God were non-different in the sense that when I finish this life, I'm just going to merge into what this thing God is. But what I felt to myself that was lacking was, it was a lack of knowledge. I didn't have any further information about this identity of God or what God is. As far as I was aware, it was just it's energy that was governing this world and allowing things to happen and not happen. But I didn't see it that God is great and I am of a lower quality or quantity than God. It was kind of like, yeah, I'll just merge. It's all good. But it was never like, there was never no personal relationship. But I didn't feel it was out of ego. I felt it was out of a lack of knowledge. I didn't know.
Those two words, quality and quantity, I think are important.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that is heard in spiritual circles. God is like an ocean, and in the ocean we see every so often waves are manifest. And so this idea of the wave being us and our appearance in the material world, and then our disappearance is like the wave going back into the ocean. And so everyone is God, everything is God, and our appearance and disappearance in the world is just like a wave in the ocean that rises up and then falls down. And the first time I heard that, I was like, that is sick. Like, I can really get behind that. Yeah, I'm definitely part of God. But then there's this verse which states achintya beda tattva, which means, like you were saying, there's actually a difference in quantity, but not in quality.
Yeah.
In quality, we are the same as God. We are made of spirit. Our soul is spirit. But in quantity, we are infinitesimal. We are absolutely tiny, and God is great. But there is a distinction. There is a difference. Just like perhaps sparks from a flame or sparks from a fire is another example.
They're fire-like. They resemble that fire, but they are not the fire.
Right. As soon as an ember thinks that it is the fire, then perhaps there's a problem that's arising. But
a lot of people have a problem with a personal God because it's hard, and I can understand this point. It's hard to wrap the mind around the fact that God has a personality.
yeah.
Like, my name for God is Krishna, and I took a group to Vrindavan, which is the home of Krishna. It's the playground of Krishna. It's and one of the attendees, actually quite a few attendees over the years have come to me and said, I get what you're saying, but does that God need to be Krishna? Does he need to have a personality? Or she? Do they need to have a personality? And I can understand why that can be quite an esoteric understanding, right?
It's interesting because the most normal thing to us is personal relationships.
Right.
Yet when a personal relationship is given to
Supreme.
God, it becomes very difficult to comprehend. Yet that is the one thing no one can go without, is a personal relationship. And we feel that this God thing, actually, this is actually a powerful realization, is that we're so used to imperfect personalism in the world.
Imperfect personalism.
We're so used to imperfect people, imperfect relationships, that when we have this idea of the perfect God, it's very hard to give that God a personal form because all we're used to is imperfect personalism. Right?
I really
What
like
a
that.
great thought. Great realization.
There's one word as well in that short verse that I shared at the beginning, which is achintya, which means inconceivable. It's actually so difficult to try and fit something like that into our tiny minds that God is a person. But I really love this point that if all you're used to are shabby relationships with imperfect people, then how can you approach some divine, omnipotent, perfected being in a personal way? Like how do I get my head around that?
And the most inconceivable thing about it being Krishna is that he, by nature, is quite a cheeky chappy. And so his interactions in the scripture with his devotees isn't like perfectly ethical. He'll do some naughty stuff here and there.
Can I give you a mad example?
Go on.
It's one of those things where you're like, in the moment you feel up for it, and then you watch it back and you're like, why did I say that?
Let's hear it.
So I was watching a series recently by Graham Hancock, who's this kind of journalist all about ancient civilizations. And he's talking about this place called Bimini Bay, which is, one of these lost, forgotten places that's now under the sea, and they're exploring it. And my partner, Reti, was saying, where do I know that name, Bimini Bay? Where do I know that name? And she looked it up, and Bimini Bay, Bimini Babe, is a famous drag queen.
Oh.
And I was like, first off, how do you know that Bimini
I was
Babe?
going to ask that.
And I was like, but that's just random. And I forgot about it. The very next day, I go on Instagram and there's a studio, Green Place Studios, where I started collaborating with these guys recently. And I go on their stories, and who's doing a photo shoot that day?
Has to be, innit?
Bimini Babe, this drag queen. And what was the first thing I thought about? Krishna. I was like, how, like, this serendipity, like, there's nothing deep in this, like this, the thing of the drag queen and the Bimini and the...
I was wondering where it's going with this.
But I surprised myself that the first thing I thought about was Krishna, because I was like, this is so stupid and like mischievous, but like this serendipity is like, there's actually nothing deep in it at all. I really feel like there's no lesson here.
It's playful,
but it was playful. I was like, the fact that these two things came together that really don't add anything to my life, but
Yeah.
it's just mischievous and playful.
It's like that saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah.
And it's only because he's always meddling, or, Radha and Krishna, they, whatever name you have for God, they're always meddling in some way, shape
Yeah.
or form.
But it helped me to realize that for so long I was trying to see God in the deep things, like always deep, always deep.
Why not in the fun?
And then, actually the fun things. And it just means that now I think of Krishna more,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. And anyway, I just wanted to
There's
share.
lots of stories like that. Like a friend of mine was saying he had this huge crush on this girl, and she used to come to the same temple that he goes to. And and so one day he goes, but he was like, no, like I don't want to speak to her. He wanted to become a monk, so he was like, oh yeah, but he totally had a crush on this girl, right? What's that?
Nothing.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And then anyway, so he goes, I had two choices. I came to the temple. I could have gone to the temple, or I could have just hang out with the cows. And at that moment in time, there was some big sort of service happening in the temple, so everyone's basically congregating there. So he thought, I don't want to bump into her because I'm trying to totally be a single celibate dude, right? So he goes and hangs out with the cows. Little does he know, he ends up with the cows. The one person that's there is this girl he's got a crush on.
Wow.
And he came to me and he was just chatting. He goes, Krishna's just having a joke with me. Like, he's totally having a medal. Like, he's just, that. I'm being so serious about my life, but God being God, it can also just be like, just kick back for a sec, man.
I mean, there is the possibility that the girl saw him walking to the cow shelter and just decided to follow up.
No, she was there already.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she was there already. But I think the argument is...
Right, I get you.
The argument is we can be as skeptical as we want about how God intervenes in our life. But when it does happen, it's kind of like, whoa, that's meddled with my internal thoughts, which no one really knows about, and something's come out to play.
Yeah.
For me, this whole thing of like God being a person really came to a head when I heard this quote about how in order for there to be love, which is understood, I think, universally as being the emotion that everyone wants to experience and also to share. When we talk about love, there have to be two different entities involved, the lover and the beloved. And without one or the other, love cannot really exist. And if it's such a deep-seated desire for every human being on the material level, then surely it holds importance on the spiritual level. So if love is what we're chasing for, materially or spiritually, there have to be two entities reciprocating with one another. And so and here's the question for someone who is, and I'm more than happy to hear it in the comment section if you feel inspired, how can it be that one person can experience love of God when one believes that I am that same entity? How can there be love?
Self-love, no?
I mean, I've got a response, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? If someone says that, self-love.
But so
we're playing like devil's advocates with ourselves.
Love is a conscious effort.
Yeah.
So it's a conscious effort from one conscious person to another. So self-love is just conscious effort from yourself to yourself.
Yeah. What if you consider yourself a conscious person?
You are.
But that means like what Keli's saying, right? That I just love myself and therefore I am God. So there's that reciprocation.
How about this? I'm not ruling out the self-love thing.
Yeah.
But how about this? Take a game of chess, for example. Is it more enjoyable to play a game of chess where you're on one side, you make a move, you run round to the other side, you make a counter move?
Pleasure.
Is that more enjoyable, or is it more enjoyable to actually play with someone else?
Yeah,
of course.
This incredible...
That needs to be I want to drop a mic, but they don't belong to us, so I'm not going to do that.
This incredible thinker called Akandadi.
We love you, Akandadi.
He was refuting this idea of survival of the fittest. You know, in biology, there's this idea of survival of the fittest. And, the idea is that the person who is the strongest, or the species that are the strongest, they're the ones that survive over time. And so people think that survival is the main factor, the driving factor for life. But he was saying it's not the fight for survival that keeps us going. It's the pursuit for pleasure.
Wow.
And in order to experience pleasure, we have to be alive. We have to survive. So actually, you see a bird flying in the sky, or a horse frolicking in the meadows, or a dog running after a bone, right? These aren't survival activities. These are pleasure activities.
Yeah.
So that's really at the center of who we are. In the Vedas, it says the soul is Satchit Ananda, Ananda bliss, pleasure seeking by nature.
Anandamaya Vyasa.
Right, we're pleasure seeking. So, I mean, I'm not ruling it out. Self-love is there. Maybe we can seek pleasure with ourselves, but isn't it just like infinitely better to experience that in a reciprocal relationship with another being?
You can only give yourself as much love as you contain, right?
Right.
And someone else may have more love to give you, and you'll never experience that unless we reach out.
And it's also the lack of love or the lack of reciprocation that can keep you pursuing it.
Yeah.
For instance, in Bhakti, you've got Vipralamba and Sambhoga. Sambhoga is union and Vipralamba is separation. And it's said that actually in separation from this other person, you feel even more love, even more hankering. You're thinking about that person even more because you're separated from them. But by definition, you can't be separated from yourself. One cannot be separated, because when one is separated, it becomes two. So actually, I would argue that's what makes love interesting, is this ebb and flow, this separation and the union.
This is beautiful. So beautiful how you've expressed it. It's more pleasurable. And it's not only pleasurable for us, it's pleasurable for the other. So it's also like this idea of loving a personal God is beautiful for the reason that that personal God cannot ever understand what it feels like to be loved, and then therefore reciprocates with us in infinitely, how to say, magnanimous ways that we could never expect either. And it's almost like a duel of love, and it's constantly expanding, as opposed to a singular where it's right when it's yourself. I love this chess analogy that you give. That's powerful. Beautiful.
There's I think in the Bhakti world, there's the most beautiful thing about this is that God is actually controlled by the love of those who love Him.
Damodar.
You got to say it one more time.
God is actually controlled by the love of those who love Him. And it kind of destroys this whole, God is this big person in the sky and I'm just a dude on planet Earth, and it's like, I love you and I'm here to serve you. But it's also the love that I have controls even God.
Yeah. You said Damodar, you got to tell the story now.
Damodar. Yeah, it's one of the names for Krishna, which means one who is bound with a rope around the waist.
Dam means belly, and Udar means bound.
Right. So the story goes, it's about baby Krishna, who's being very naughty, stealing butter and running around. And so his mother Yashoda tries to calm him down and kind of lock him up, so to say. And so she gets some rope and she tries to bind him, and she's 2 fingers too short. So she goes round to every other house in the village and gets rope from their houses and ties it all together and tries to tie this cheeky boy up. And she's still 2 fingers too short. She's trying to tie him to this grinding mortar. They used to have these in India. And she's always 2 fingers too short. And she's trying harder and harder. Just as she's about to give up, she ties it. And it's understood that the 2 fingers represent one's endeavor and causeless mercy, which I just think is so profound, because we can try to love someone as much as possible, but if we're not accepted by them, it may never come into fruition. But that's how you control God. That's how you bind God, is through endeavor to love and God's reciprocation or mercy.
I still think, though, this whole idea is very difficult when we, in the Bhakti, when we talk about Krishna.
Mm.
And we have this form,
I get it.
this dark blue, blackish form.
Mm.
Holding a flute.
And, wearing, exotic clothing. And for
Loves
some...
the cows.
Sidelong glances.
Yeah. Sidelong glances, his
Belly rolls.
belly roll.
Sweet belly rolls.
Sweet belly rolls.
Reddish lips. And it's kind of like, for anyone outside of like the sort of Eastern Hemisphere,
They're probably already left by this point, let's be honest. Like, you're watching this far, you're probably a Krishna Bhakta. Like, you're not watching this going, I don't know, maybe Krishna, maybe baby Krishna's my guy, They've turned off. They've just gone, no, I'm done with this. Like, let's go on to the next podcast. Let's listen about self-help and self-love.
I mean, it's such a confronting...
Are there multiple forms?
Well,
is that the one form?
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, that gets interesting.
I think this is a good...
right?
Yeah, go on, tell us more. Where's your mind at?
We talk about multiple names of God.
Mm-hmm.
You have Krishna, you have Ram, you have Allah, you have Jehovah. We talk about multiple forms. Do all of those names have forms? Apparently some of those names don't have forms.
Mm.
Yet we still use terminologies like, yes, my God can hear me.
Mm.
My God did this for me. There's consciousness behind that, right?
Mm.
So when it comes to form, the only God that we know has forms is in the Vedic culture. In Christian culture, I don't know how much is explained around the form of God, or it's generally depicted as an old man, right? A bearded man. So why are we so sure that Krishna is the form of God?
Well, there's
and a form that's not so normal for us to even see.
Yeah.
Right?
What's that verse? Brahmeti Paramameti.
Bhagavan
iti Shabdite. Yeah. So it discusses these three kind of forms of God. One is Brahman, the impersonal effulgence, the energy, like we were saying.
Mm-hmm.
One is Paramatma, which is God within the heart, directing the wanderings of every living being. And the third is Bhagavan, which is this personal form of God.
Mm.
But like you're saying, Bhagavan can exhibit themselves in infinite ways to infinite amount of people in infinite times and eras. It reminds me of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a great saint who would go to mosques, churches, mandirs, and he would go to all of these places and he would say, how beautiful it is that my Lord has manifested in this way to these people.
Right. If you're an agnostic and you're still trying to piece these things together and you're still with us, then oftentimes I do share this in Bhakti workshops where I share that, yes, these three aspects of divinity are there, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. And I think that even if Bhagavan is a step too far for you, I think it's okay to stick with Paramatma and Brahman, but not deny the possibility. Like, I think I can get it, like, to feel God in the heart, to understand God as an energy. Those are maybe easier because of our experiences in this world. It's easier to conceive of. But I think what's important is that we don't then close off the possibility. Because if God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, etc., whatever the qualities that are commonly understood as being of God, then why can he not be a person? Or why can they not be a person? And so it's important to not rule it off the table. And ultimately, if it's not Krishna, I think that's also okay. Like, I think it's okay to have a conception of God that is based off of a legitimate spiritual lineage. And if you pray to that God, I don't think when we get to that point, and say, for example, if I'm wrong, God's not Krishna, I'm on my deathbed, I'm chanting Krishna, 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 and then I open my eyes and it's not Krishna, I don't think it's going to be you chanted the wrong name. Like, sorry, mate, you're going to have to go back and do that whole thing again. I think that God is going to be benevolent enough to go, no, you worshipped me and you loved me in the way you wanted to. And what connected with you according to your time, place, circumstance, culture, race, nationality, blah, blah, blah. your certain construct. You worshipped according to that,
Mm-hmm.
and I love you anyway.
Mm.
That's my understanding of God. I don't think he's going to be that harsh with me
Mm.
if he's not a little sweet little blue boy.
I always found it interesting how when bhakti yogis and those who have a personal relationship with God, they have sentiments towards God. They have emotions towards
Is that what
God.
you mean? So
they feel, oh, God is so kind to me, or look how sweet God looks, or how mischievous is he. When we have sentiments with something which isn't physically present in our life, I used to question, so what does the presence of God actually feel like in someone's life? The personal presence of God, what does it feel like? Because it doesn't look like anything, because at least I can't see God. And I don't know if you guys have any experiences where you felt like, I could feel the presence of God, and what that felt like, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. For me, in the 8 years of applying myself to spiritual life in some way or another, there's maybe been 3 or 4 times where something very tangible has happened that has kind of like given me faith to carry on and keep pursuing and keep discovering and uncovering. And those times are like almost a bit difficult to rationalize and even a bit difficult to articulate. And I end up asking myself, am I fabricating this, or am I hallucinating? But you know, like, for instance, friendship, if you meet someone and you like click straight away, you can't really explain why, but it's just the feeling's so strong that it's real, right? I've had a few glimpses of that experience and that relationship, but it's hard for me to say definitively if that was absolutely true or not, but it was enough to keep me going.
Yeah.
I mean, I can share one that I feel is not too esoteric. I am linked with a wonderful person known as Kadamba Swami, great teacher, and I would say, I mean, it might be a bit, no, I can say it. He was a friend of mine. I appreciated him, and we had a really wonderful relationship and friendship. And not to understand that as I'm his peer or equal, but I was his junior, and I still consider him like a teacher of mine. But there was a friendship there, and I promised him I would be there at the time when he was leaving his body. He contracted terminal cancer, and before I saw him for the penultimate time, I told him I promise I'll come back. And it was while we were on our retreat. We do a retreat yearly to Vrindavan, and he was filming a video in the courtyard to the place where we were staying, the accommodation. And after he'd finished filming, I went up to him and I said, I'll be there. I promise, I'll come back. And he kind of like did the whole Indian nod, but he's a man from Amsterdam, but he had mastered the Indian nod. And so that was the last time I saw him upright in person. And I started receiving news in March, the following March, after our November retreat. The following March, I started receiving news that things were getting serious. And at the time, I spoke to my family, and they said, "No need to go. Like you've had a lifetime of memories with this person. I think they'll understand that. He'll understand that you didn't come. You've got a family. You've got responsibilities. You've got service here. You shouldn't go." And I waited. 1 week went by. 2 weeks went by. And a festival known as Gaur Punim, which is a big festival in the Bhakti calendar, was getting close.
Yeah.
And I just got the gut categorical feeling that it's going to happen at this time. And so I booked a ticket to Vrindavan for 4 days. I had to come back after those 4 days. There's no way I could stay. I land in Vrindavan, go straight to the room where he is, and I lead a kirtan. And he was lying in the bed, and people were saying maybe he might see out, the next few weeks. So I just kind of had got to the point where I said, okay, enough. Like, I'll just say my goodbyes now. At least I came for those 4 days and said my goodbyes. 2 mornings later, it was the day after Gurpurnim, and I was leaving the next day. And we went to the place where he had planned to be buried. And so I'm there leading a kirtan, and suddenly it starts drizzling rain. And it's understood that when it drizzles rain, that the demigods have come to shower their blessings. And so the kirtan's the rain starts coming, drizzling, like very light rains, very soothing rains start coming. And I just went, it's happening right now. He's leaving right now. So I get up from where I was sitting in the kirtan and I said, let's go. And everyone was like, why are we going? Like, we haven't received a message yet that we need to go now. And as soon as we stood up and we started taking the kirtan towards the flat where he was staying, the message came through that this was the moment that he was going. So we get to the flat and we're leading kirtan downstairs. Like, his flat was up a couple of floors and we were down at the bottom leading kirtan and still singing downstairs. And at one point I just kind of felt a bursting feeling of go now. And so I went up the stairs and I told one of the other there was a lady there that was there. I said, you continue the kirtan, I'm going. So I run up the stairs, and as I got to the top, the kirtan that was going on in the room was getting to this like climax point, and it happened there and then. And the whole one, that I had promised that I was going to come. 2, that I was there in 4 days, and in those 4 days it happened. 3, that these rains had come. 4, that this intuition told me go up the stairs. The whole kind of combination of all those things put together made me go, Krishna put this together. He made it that because of our relationship, because of his, I guess, because of Maharaj's kindness and because of his wanting to make sure that that reciprocation was fulfilled, that everything culminated in that magical moment. And I could say my goodbyes, and the whole thing was just really beautiful. And so that was, I guess, I'm sorry it was such a long story, but it was also like really powerful that was orchestrated by God, you know, and I could even be there for the moment that he was placed in the burial, and the whole thing happened in those 4 days. And I left Vrindavan going, it was exactly right, you know. There was no detail that could have gone otherwise. So
it's so transcendentally engineered.
Yeah,
right?
fully transcendentally engineered.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Anyway, what about you? Tell us a moment where you realized that God is a person.
A person. I think with me it's been with the name. With the name of God. I think I go back to maybe my first year of monastic life, and we had this big festival coming up, and basically we were about to put on this big play. The team that were organizing it, out of stress, dropped out one. And I was just a young kid at the time. I was like, damn, all right. I was just supposed to be acting in this play. And the team started dropping out. And they said, well, you're going to have to figure this out now. It's 5 days from the festival, and we need to orchestrate a whole soundtrack, the play, decoration. 5 days. 5 days before. 20,000 people are about to come through the doors.
Jeez.
And so I was just trying everything, and I just felt totally, genuinely helpless at that point. There's nothing more I can do. I've tried everything. I've exercised my intelligence, physically done everything. Nothing's happening. So that morning, during our sort of 2 hours of meditation in the morning, I sat down and I chanted. I said, Krishna, I've got nothing. I literally have nothing. I can't do anything. I've exercised everything. I'm stressed. It's totally up to you. The next 2 hours of chanting just flew by, and when I say the word bliss, I understood what the word bliss actually means and feels like. We use that term a lot as blissful, as bliss. I actually felt the definition of this term through the chanting, and I knew it was coming from the meditation, the name. It wasn't coming from anywhere else. And I just remember thinking, I just want to remain in this space the whole time. If this is what a little glimpse of God is and love is, spiritual love, then I want to stay here forever. And I remember that one experience, and I always look back at that experience and I say, it was real. It works. This presence is real. Don't forget it. You know, And yeah, so for me, it's...
If you've had such an experience of God in your life, please share it with us. Please put it in the comments. Please share this conversation with a friend that's thinking about this concept right now. Or re-listen to it if you feel called to. This isn't just a moment of time for entertainment, but also an opportunity for us to go deep in our understanding of what is divinity, who is divinity. And on that note, I think we'll leave you with love and light, and hope to see you at the next episode of For Soul's Sake. Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, you'll love my interview with Raghunath Kapo on his fascinating journey from New York punk to monk. Go check it out.
The guy just said, I've got a gun and I'm going to kill everyone tonight. And it was just one of those wake-up calls that you get when you hear like, oh, tonight's the night. I forgot that we all die. It's one of these things as a monk you read every day that life is temporary, your body's temporary, people leaving their bodies, etc. But you'd never think it's going to happen to you that day.